Hello, this is a Pacesetter training video that is going to show you a really cool technique that you can put in your toolkit for sketching roofs by taking only one measurement in the field. This is something that's similar to what different third-party pictometry companies like EagleView, for instance, may use. They'll use satellite imagery, and in conjunction with that, they can use that to draw the roof with minimal measurements. But in this case, you can take one measurement in the field and you can draw this roof in Sketch. Very, very helpful and powerful if you're a person that likes to measure roofs. If the vendor offers ladder assist on steeper roofs, certainly take advantage of that. If not, and you have to get on the roof or you don't want to pay yourself, and you do access steeper roofs, you don't want to be on that roof any longer than you have to. Get your inspection complete, get all your photos done, and then you can take one measurement and get off the roof. As a matter of fact, you don't even necessarily have to take the measurement on the roof, but you only need one measurement. So one thing you'll need is Google Earth Pro Desktop. This is the version I'm using. If you have Google Earth Pro, the web-based, browser-based version, fine, you can keep that. But for this technique, do not use that version. You do need the Desktop Pro version. So if you don't have it, go to Google Earth, download that, and install it. You'll see here during the video, it has a feature in it that we're going to need that makes it very, very helpful to use this technique. So I have a random address I'm going to use here. We're going to pop it in here in the search field, click our search button. It's going to zoom down to this house. If you're a Google Earth user, you're probably familiar with when you put an address in, it's going to put in a marker on top of the house. And what we're going to do, the goal is here, is that we're going to find the house. We're going to spin the camera around here and tilt it to where we're going to try to get, the goal is to get the camera right on top of the roof, shooting straight down on the roof without any angle, zoomed in to a reasonable level of the roof, and the roof is lined up in a square. In other words, the top of the house will be square like this. I use this bar here as a reference to try to square it up. You don't want it tilted, because what we're going to do, like tilted like this, for instance, off axis. You want it straight up and down, left and right, as square as you can get it, because what we're going to do in the end is once we get the image set that way, we're going to use our snipping tool in Windows, and we're going to drag a box around the house, capture it as an image, and import that image into Sketch, and then we're going to trace over that image using Sketch. So really, really cool technique, a cool tool. So let's talk a little bit about how to manipulate Google Earth to get this. So you're going to have some tools up here at the top right. This is zooming. You can obviously use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. It's a little bit quicker and easier. Really, you don't need this sliding tool. This slides the camera up and down. You're going to be using this area right here. And really, the main one you're going to be using is this spins the camera left and right, these two left and right chevrons. And then the vertical chevrons, the top and the bottom, they tilt the camera. We're generally only going to be using this one right here, although you may need some adjustments on some of these other ones. But the main one is this bottom chevron, and then you're scrolling to zoom in and out. So let's say this is the house. One thing you may want to do in your normal duties, or however you want to use this, I recommend, is when you get a claim to see if you want to use this technique, is go to Google Earth, put the house in, look at it like this in the satellite view, get an idea if it's a big giant house, this is a small house, maybe get down in street view, look at the pitches to see, and get an idea whether you want to employ this technique or not. Again, if it's steep and high and you have ladder assist available to you that's paid for by the carrier that we work with, great, use that, you don't need to do this. But if not, this will help you determine whether you want to access the roof to take this measurement and scope it, or if you want to purchase your own pictometry. Again, what this technique does is it lets you save that money and time on you using and paying for your own pictometry, for instance, EagleView. It may be a roof that's not that steep and it's a single story, for instance, but maybe it's just a big giant roof and it's cut up and it's complicated, and you don't want to sit and walk around that roof and take all those measurements to draw it. You don't have to with this technique. So I recommend every house you get, take a look at it. Go down and take a look and determine whether you want to use this technique or not. Now we're going to pretend that this roof is steeper, so this is maybe why we're not going to go measure it while we're on the roof or whatever. We're going to use this technique. It's not a steep roof. I've already looked at it. But we're going to pretend it is, and we're going to use this technique. So let's go down and look at the house, kind of go through the scenario that you normally would. If you haven't used Google Earth, up at the top right here, this is where our little icon, our person icon, just grab it, hold on to it, drag and drop. If you see a blue line, you can drop it right on that line in front of the house. It'll take you to Street View. We want to spin the camera around, take a look at the house. And now we can look and see how steep it is and get an idea and make a determination if we want to use this technique. In this case, this is a very easy house, 412, small. Me personally, I would say, oh, I've looked at it. I'm just going to measure that in the field. I'm going to get on the roof. I'll run tape on this. That's very easy. I can do that in 5 minutes. We're going to pretend, though, that it's steeper. And by looking at this in Street View, I'm going to go, ooh, I may not want to walk around the edges on that and take measurements and maybe even in the ground. I would rather just use this trick. So I would make a little note on my scope sheet, the back of my scope sheet for that risk. And the day I get out there, when I flipped it over to do my inspection, I would have that little note up there that reminds me I'm using this Google technique. And that tells me I need to only take this one measurement. Because you may have several inspections and they're 3, 4, 5 days out. You've looked at these houses. You don't remember what the house looks like 4 or 5 days later when you go inspect. You don't know if you've done it or not. Put a little note on your scope sheet or somewhere to remind you on that risk that you've already looked at it and you've made the determination of whether or not you're going to use this technique. Because if you are going to use it, you need to know that when you're there, because that's going to tell you, I don't need to measure this roof. I just need to take one measurement and I'm done. That will remind you to do that. Important note. Okay, so we're going to say, yep, we're going to use the technique. Let's exit Street View. And now, remember, what we're going to try to do, the object here is to get this house centered, zoomed down to a reasonable scope, and lined up and square, okay? So one thing we want to do first, I personally don't like this. You can leave it. I don't like to have the marker on the roof. It just kind of gets in my way. And so I want to move this. And the technique you do this is go up to the search bar. You'll have your address already in here that you've used. And back out the last number of the address. This is an 8. And make it like a 4 or something. All you want is to tell Google Earth to move this marker onto one of the other houses and get it off of this house. But to do this, you can put the number in, let's say 4, and I just put the cursor back on the main view screen and I get it ready and I hit the enter key because enter is going to make the Google look for this, move the marker, but it's going to move the map a little bit. You can leave it alone if you want. I just hit the enter key to make it reposition the marker, and then I left click on the main view screen real quick to stop the movement. So let's do it. I've got the number in, I've got my cursor on the main view screen, I've got my finger on the enter key on the keyboard and my right hand on the mouse button. Here we go. Enter, it moves, and then left click and it stops the movement. And now we've moved it. We've got a clean house here. Now we want to align this. So let's zoom in a little bit. If you'll notice the camera, I'm going to tilt the other direction a little bit. Kind of square it up a little bit. You'll notice that the camera is kind of, if the camera, in reality, the camera is like in front of the house across the street, but it's angling and looking at our house. We don't want that. We want the camera to be right up on top of the house, looking straight down. If I use the tilt feature, which is this bottom, watch, it's going to tilt down to look straight down on where the camera really is positioned, right here. Now we're looking straight down on this house, but we want to grab our house. So The first thing you do is, kind of get your camera up there on the house, tilt it down and get it looking straight down, and then grab the mouse and move it back down and recenter your house. Now, when you zoom, it's going to tilt the camera again a little bit. See how it starts tilting back towards the front of the house? Because we do want to get relatively close to the house. This is pretty good right here. You don't have to get crazy close. We want to be able to see the features of the house, because remember, we're going to trace this house. This is a very easy one. So it's tilted back again. So now let's go back to our bottom chevron, and we're going to tilt the camera again to get it on top of the house. It'll go out of view, but we'll drag it back down. Wait till the camera stops. There we go. Now let's drag the house back in here. Now we're in pretty good shape right here. Now remember, we want to try to square the house up. It's tilted right now. What I always do is I try to use this bar, the top of the software platform, as a reference. And I want to try, let's say it's a little easier to see this house edge. I want to try to get this back eave lined up in parallel with this. This is my little reference tool. So we want to use the spinning tool to do this. Now remember, if you go down, this is what I haven't gone over yet. You can use this tool here, but if you click it, it's not very granular. It spins it in sections. It's stepped spinning. We want to do something very, very slight. So what you can do is go on the tilt tool, and when you hold the button and it tilts and stops tilting, if you keep holding the mouse button down, a little bit left or right of this, it will spin slowly, slowly. The further I move to the left, I'm holding my mouse, so I'll do this in a second and show you. It spins faster. If I stay down here and spin to the right, the further away from this icon I go, the faster it spins. But if I get close, it starts spinning really, really slow. And I could even put it right in center on the chevron, this icon, and it'll stop spinning. So let's do that. I'm going to tilt it. I'm holding the mouse button down. And see, I haven't moved the mouse, but see how slowly it's tilting? I want to go the other direction, so I'm going to move my mouse while I'm holding the mouse down. I'm going to move the mouse to the right. Watch, I'll do it dramatically. See my mouse in the upper right corner getting way away from that bottom icon. It's spinning faster. If I go down here, it'll spin back the other direction. It's left and right of this little icon here. You can see the little shadowed area as I move my mouse on the little circle. But if I put it right on the chevron, it'll stop. I'm holding my mouse key down the whole time. So let's line this up. Back of the house is the tree, the best we can. I'm going to get really granular here. You got to play with it. We're trying to line the back of the house up as close as we can, and then just let off the mouse. It's a little bit too far. You can click on the mouse too with the mouse close left or right of the chevron. You can just let off and just click left and right really slightly, kind of line it up. If you want to move the house a little closer up here to the bar, like say you were doing this house, you can get it. The idea is to get this line and the back of the house, or whatever the side of the house it is, parallel as you can. Now, one thing you might be saying, well, Greg, why are we doing this when we have this tree here? I can't really see the back of the house. I'm not even sure what's back here, if there's an extension on the house, how the roof is built back here. That's a great question. That's why you need Google Earth Pro and this particular function in it. And that is going to view historical imagery. What this does is it puts a little bar here, and if you'll notice, it has dates. 2023, 1985, we're at 1/24. January 24 was when this was taken, this satellite imagery. But you can slide this little slider, or you can just click the little chevrons at the end. I just click the chevrons, and it will go back in time, back and forth, to show you different satellite imagery. And some of the imagery may be taken like in the winter or fall when this tree is defoliated and we can see through it and we can see what the roof looks like. Another reason you would use this is maybe the initial image that's pulled up is blurry and you can't see it that well. You can go to other images to see if any of the images are a little bit more tighter. and the resolution is better. So let's do this just as an example. So I usually just click on this left icon here. Again, you can slide this to different dates. It's a little easier just to click and look. So click. Okay, so now we can't, it's blurry, we can't really use this, but we can see sort of the back of the house. Looks like it have maybe like a little extension here sticking off, probably a little shed roof. We're not quite sure because it's so blurry. Let's keep going. Tree again, blurry, blurry and tree. Sometimes the imagery is not compliant. Maybe it's not gonna be working with you and show you what you need. But we're gonna keep clicking. There's a way around this if you can't see this stuff. That's reasonably well, except the back is quite pixelated, so we still can't tell what's going on. And I don't see that shed roof back here in these other pictures. It may be just an anomaly. It may be like a blurring of the vent or something here, but let's keep looking, see what we can see. Yeah, it looks pretty straight back here. I think it's just a straight eave back here. And what you can do is when you get to the house, you may still say, well, I'm not sure what's back here, but when I get to the house and do the inspection, I'll take my elevation shots and I'll see the back. So then you can add that. You can sketch that little piece in here and figure out what it is. And if you need to take a little measurement maybe out in the field one to help you on this one, great, you can do that. So let's say I'm going to keep looking. We may just use the first one. Oh, that's not too bad. It's a little blurry. We can still get an idea of what this is. It's just a big hip with a hip pulled out here, a bump out. That's really all it is. We could use this. It's not quite granular enough, but we could use it. This is a little bit better. Let's go back to the first one and just look. We know the back is okay, so we don't really worry about the tree now. We kind of know what's back there, but let's see if we can get a little tighter. This is a little bit tighter lines. I would use this image. So let's use this. So we got it kind of lined up pretty good. Now let's get our snipping tool. If you're not familiar with the snipping tool, it's in Windows. I would put an icon on my taskbar. I have one. I use it all the time for various purposes. If you don't have it, you're not familiar with it, go down to your taskbar in Windows. If you have Cortana, you can use that. If you have your search field open, you can type in, or you may have a little icon that's a little magnifying glass. In any case, get down to your taskbar, to your search feature. Just type in Snippet, S-N-I-P. It'll immediately drop Snippet, the app in. You can click on it and open it. Again, I recommend you make a shortcut. So here we go. Here's the snipping tool. What you're going to do is select New, and then you're going to drag a box over the house. You want to try to get the entire house. Don't get too far away like this. Let's get down. We want to get as close as we can to the house. This will work. It's not a problem. It's just better to kind of tighten it up a little bit. So let's do New again. And, you know, something like this. You don't need to get crazy with it. And now you're going to save this image in the customer's folder. If you're doing this before you go out in the field, what I always did, and I determined I was going to use this prior to my inspection, I would go ahead and grab the imagery like this and put it in my customer's folder. I've already done the work, so when I get back later, I don't have to go do this. Okay, so we're going to do File, Save As. I have a little test folder on my desktop that I'm using for training. This is it right here. We could just leave it defaulted to the title capture. You don't have to name this. You're not going to attach this image anywhere. You're just going to import it in Sketch. Okay, so now we've got our image. We're done. We can leave this here in case we need to go back and get it again for some purpose. And let's go into Sketch. Show you how to use this. Oh, let me go back one thing. I forgot the measurement part. So when you're out in the field, remember we talked about taking one measurement. Normally, if you were measuring this by hand, and this is a hip roof, if you're not familiar with manual measurements, on a hip roof like this, a full hip, you would just need to measure the perimeter of the house No rakes. With hips, you do not need to measure rakes like you do with gables. But with hips, you would just need to measure this perimeter only, and you need to know the accurate pitch of all the roof slopes. That's it. If you had that information and you drop that in Sketch, it would be an accurate square count. But in this case, remember, we're going to take one measurement in this technique. Keep in mind, in this technique, this one measurement you need must be a flat measurement. It cannot be sloped. In other words, you do not take this measurement on the rake of a roof. It has to be flat, and the longer, the better. The longer the measurement is, the more accurate your square count is going to be, because this measurement is going to be inputted into Sketch, and Sketch is going to use that measurement as a reference, so that when you're tracing and stretching out the roof to match the picture, it's using that measurement you took in the field as a reference tool to correlate all the other measurements. So the longer that measurement you take in the field, the more accurate the correlation is going to be. So in other words, you could take this flat measurement of this eave, but it would be much more accurate for you to take this eave in the back. You can do that from the ground if you feel comfortable on the roof. If it's not too steep, you could do that. Technically, you could take a measurement of the driveway and get that measurement. Any flat measurement will work. I usually do it on the roof. I'm already on the roof. I usually take a ridge measurement. This is a little too short. On this particular house, I would probably, if it was too steep to get down to the eaves on the roof and measure it safely, I would just measure it from the ground and run a tape on the edges of the siding and then add my overhangs, and I'm done. So let's say we did that. We took a measurement, and let's say this is, I'm going to say 50 foot 6 inches. Yeah, let's just roll with that. 50.5 feet. Okay, so we have our one flat measurement. On hips, it doesn't hurt to take an extra measurement or two. You don't need it. Just to check your measurements and see that Sketch is using the right square count. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it's a good idea to have one or two extra rake measurements just to check. All right, so let's go to Sketch. We'll show you how to import this. So we're in Sketch now. To import the imagery, you're going to select the Options tab, Import, drop the menu down, and then we're going to select Import Underlay Image. That's going to bring up a search window. You're going to point that to your customer folder and point it, obviously, to the image. Select it and say Open. Before it lets you drop it in, it's going to ask you, Set Scale. Xactimate wants to know, click on one end of a line with a known length. This is where you measured it. So let's say we measured this back, so we want to click right on the corner the best we can. And then it says click the other end of the line, noting the length. So let's go all the way down here. We're going to get as close as we can. And then it asks, what is that measurement? 50.5 feet. And we say OK, and then it will drop the image into Sketch. After we say OK, here's our image. Now we're going to trace this roof. We have to set the right pitches and everything, of course. When you were on the roof, you set a pitch gauge on it. This is a 412. It's going to look a little weird if we change it to a steeper pitch, so we're going to leave it at 412. But in Sketch, when you drop a roof in, the default pitch is always 412, unless you change that. And you would have to go change the pitch to get it to sketch properly. But we're going to leave it as a 412 because that's what this roof is. Just keep in mind you do need to change and set your pitches as you always do. So what you first do is go down to this little wireframe, or they call it the outline button. It's down here at the bottom right. Click on this button, and what this does is it makes the sketching roofs you use wireframe. You can see through them. You need to do that to be able to trace. For instance, the default is, now we know we need a hip. So let's go back to our tools, drop the roof menu down, select a hip. As you know, by default, it has this light blue color in all the slopes or the facets. It's opaque. If we drop this over onto our image, we can't see through it. We need to be able to see through this roof. That's what this button does right here, the outline button. Watch. Now we can drag this around and draw as we normally would in Sketch. So basically this roof is very simple. It's 2 hips. So let's do the main hip first. We're going to drag this and put the corner of it right up here, best we can. Now we know, even though we drag this out visually, and see, here's our line right here. This is the line we're looking at, the edge of the roof. Visually, if we drag that out to about right here, that looks pretty good. And look, we're real close. We're at 50.5 on our measurement. So let's change this to 50. It's 50 foot 5 inches, I'm sorry. It's 50 foot 6 inches. 50.5, enter. Now we're at 50 foot 6 inches. We're good. The reason I point this out is sometimes visually the way the house is captured with the imagery, you'll pull it out to the best you can. Maybe there's gutters and it's a little fuzzy, and then you look and your measurement's a little off. What you want to make sure is at least that one measurement that you took, that part of the sketch roof that you draw, make sure that that measurement is what you actually took, even though visually it might be a little off. Because we know we took that measurement. We know in the field it's actually 50 foot 6 inches. Okay, so great, we got that. Let's drag our handle down here at the bottom. We're going to match that up the best we can. Again, don't worry about this matching perfectly because it's satellite imagery that's fuzzy. The camera's still tilted a little bit. The square count's going to be close enough that we're going to be fine if we write the roof. Keep in mind, if you don't know, that most all pictometry companies have disclaimers. They will usually say they're plus or minus 5% off on their drawings of roofs. So there is a little bit of leeway, error on each side. Okay, so we have our main hip drawn. Now let's just use our brake tool, and we can click right on that line, hold our control key down, drag out this little bump out, and we're done. That roof is completed. Now when you've finished all of your tracing, again, you can go back to your outline view back and forth if you're looking. Sometimes you can't see. If you're drawing dormers or cut-up roofs, you need to kind of see a little bit what it looks like. You can go back and forth with this outline tool, but you need the outline tool on to actually do the tracing. So we're finished. We're good to go. Now we can delete the image. Once you're completed, once you are finished, you can get rid of the image. Keep in mind, make sure you're really completed, because once you delete the image, you can't put it back under the image or back under the sketch. You have to start over. So we're done here. So let's click on the image, right click, delete underlay image. It's going to ask you, deleting this object cannot be undone. Do you want to continue? Yep, we're good. Now there's our roof. We'll take our outline tool, and it looks just like we sketched it and measured it ourselves. 23.25 squares. I bet you that's really, really close. If we took a tape on this and we would get these measurements, we're good to go. So I hope that helps you. It's not really that complicated. There are some steps. Go through this again. It's an extremely powerful tool to have in your toolkit to use when you need it. In your career, there are going to probably be a number of situations where this tool is going to be a lifesaver for you. So it's great to have in your toolkit and know how to use it. Thank you so much again. If you have any questions, as always, get with your manager and claim supervisor. We'll be happy to support you, and you have a great day. See you on the next video.